Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sully's Open Conversation, the show that aims to have an unfamiliar conversation in a familiar environment. As always, I am your host Sully, and today I'm joined with Mike McCarthy. Welcome,
Hi.
Mike.
Hi, Sully.
So I've taken the drive up to Sheffield to come and see Mike, who we were put in touch with a couple of months ago, I would say.
Yeah, we sort of got a mutual
Friends,
contact, haven't we?
Yeah.
And that's how we met each other.
But if you'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, to camera?
Go for it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Mike McCarthy, and I'm a former journalist. I'm a husband, dad to two kids, and lived in Sheffield for quite a long time. My family grew up here, the kids grew up here, and this is my home, and it's a city that I really love, and I always look forward to coming back when I go away on trips here, there, and everywhere. And as a journalist, I sort of covered wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, terrorist atrocities, the Boston Marathon bombing in the States, the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, way back. The Hillsborough disaster, for example. It's been a fairly intense and challenging career.
Wow, that's very impressive. Very impressive. An extensive portfolio.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as a war reporter, though. It's there are other people who are far better at it than I ever was. But I did get sent to situations like that. Probably because they thought I was dispensable.
That's absolutely fantastic, Mike. So the way that we like to start the show is if you could name a positive experience that you have heard, seen, or done recently.
So many, actually. I run a few talking groups for men in Sheffield, one based at Sheffield United, the Sheffield United ground, one based at the Sheffield Wednesday ground, and on Monday night at the Sheffield Wednesday ground, one of the footballers, one of the first team players, came down to talk to us at Talk Club. And it was really interesting to hear a footballer who is well paid, very much admired, seen very much as a role model, particularly to men, come down and be so open and honest about his own mental health. And he was talking to us about the pressures on footballers and how there's a fear of not getting picked on Saturday if you talk about your mental health.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it sort of indicates to the manager that you're not as fit and not as focused. So to hear Will, won't mind me using his name, Will Vaux, it was just so kind of uplifting to see a guy like that be so open. And the other men in the group took a lot of inspiration from it, I think. So that was.
And it shines a different perspective, actually, because you don't usually hear professional athletes speaking about their troubles and the experiences that they go through.
Absolutely not. And normally, when they do speak about it, it's after their career's over.
Yes.
So it's from the safety, if you like, of retirement. That's not to say that a lot of people in various sports have been very. I'm going to say the word brave. I mean, it shouldn't be that you have to be brave, but in the current climate, I think it is quite brave of them. However, when you look at sportsmen and women who are currently, professionals and working professionals, as it were, very, very few of them will talk about their mental health.
Yeah. Certainly when they're actually playing the sport. 100%,
sure. Yeah,
100%.
exactly. Yeah.
So the question I also like to ask to start with, which is very important, is how have you been mentally recently?
It varies enormously. I lost my son Ross, as you know, to suicide last February. And since then, it's been a very, very difficult and traumatic road that we've had to follow. Lately, I've been kind of okay, but it's a daily thing, and I suppose, here we are, 21 months later or whatever it is, and I think my state of mind at the moment is trying to accept that this is eternal grief, that this isn't going to go away, that things will change, and as people always say to me who've been in this situation, that your life grows around the grief. It doesn't get any smaller, but your life grows around it. And it probably sounds a bit strange, but I think, the realization that he's not coming back, I'm never going to see him again, I'm never going to talk to him again. In a way, accepting that is maybe part of the healing for me. But
peace, it kind of brings a bit of peace, really, doesn't it?
Yeah,
in a strange way.
It does. I mean, if you're in a situation and you're kind of antagonistic towards it or want to get away from it, there's always that pressure. I think with this, horrible though it is, if you kind of accept that this is the way it is, then you can move on with other things. I think, but acceptance is one thing, but it doesn't obviously make it any easier.
Of course. I've of course have had conversations with you before, and you've told me the story. But for those that may not know you or know your story, would you mind kind of covering a little bit of Ross and your experience?
Yeah, sure. I had retired and was looking back on what I thought was a decent career. Made my mistakes, but managed to escape relatively unscathed. And kind of looking forward to retirement. Everybody always says happy retirement. Happiness goes with retirement. And so, yeah, that's the position, broadly speaking, that's the position I was in. And, I sometimes look back to the 20th of February when I went to bed and closed my eyes. Did I count my blessings, that for all the sort of good things that I've got. I've got a wonderful family. I've been with my wife for 40 years. Amazing. And very, very proud of the kids. I'm proud of the kids. And, it's just so lucky. And, don't get me wrong, it's not that I didn't cherish my life. I just didn't cherish it enough, I think. And, the phone went at 3:30 in the morning, and it was Ross's fiancée ringing to say that she'd found. It's okay. She'd found Ross in the hallway, and that it wasn't looking good. That the ambulance crew were there, and she'd call us back as soon as there'd been any kind of sort of definitive word from the ambulance crew. And we got a call 5 minutes later to say that Ross had died. And so we packed our bags, got in the car, and drove a couple of hours to Ross's house. It was like a February night. I don't remember much about the journey. But, we got there, and Ross had gone, his body had gone, and he'd written a letter, a long sort of farewell letter, and that had been taken away by the police. That's okay. It was just so hard because, I don't know, it just, the way I describe it is like falling through darkness, just space or, featureless something, just falling. And that sort of panicking feeling that you were never, ever going to touch the ground. And that's, I remember sort of getting to the house, and then it was almost until I got to the house, it kind of hadn't happened, if that makes sense. It
doesn't feel real, sort of.
Yeah, getting to Ross's house, sort of the reality hit me. For example, I walked into the living room, and he'd got a picture frame with two pictures in it, and one of the pictures was me and Ross at a little farm when he was a boy, and he was holding a duckling, and next to it he'd got a picture of himself with his own son, and Charlie, his son, had got a duckling. The two pictures together, it just sort of immediately, I don't know, just time and generations and, the fleeting nature of life, and I just fell to the floor. I just fell to the floor, and so, yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone would like to or would ever want to have that kind of experience. And it's just a massive credit to you all to be so perseverant and resilient in a situation that, I mean, almost been on the other side of it, and of course my parents were very scared, but I was very fortunate, and they were fortunate as well. And it's difficult to be on one side and the other side. So hearing that side, which I don't usually, strangely, get to hear very often. It's just, you can't put it into words, really. You can't.
No, and it's one of the reasons that I talk about it, and I try to be as open as I possibly. Well, there are a few reasons. One is that I spent my life trying to persuade people to talk on camera, sometimes when they were going through very difficult, traumatic times, and I kind of think that having been that person, I can't now not sort of behave in the way that I've always expected people, or try to ask people to be. And the other thing is that the letter, when we finally got it back, it's about a week before we managed to get the hold of the letter, which was difficult in itself. But when we got it, Ross, there was one sentence that stayed with me. It's all stayed with me, but this one sentence in particular: please fight for mental health. The support is just not there. And what Ross meant by that is that he'd suffered with severe depression for over 10 years. He'd gone to the NHS to try to arrange some therapy, and they put him on a 6-month waiting list, and he died 2 weeks into the wait. And when I eventually sort of managed to, get anywhere close to picking myself up, I did a lot of research. I'm a journalist, so I did a lot of research around the whole area because I wanted to honour what was effectively Ross's dying wish: please fight for mental health. And I discovered that this was quite a common story, that this was not an unusual story.
That in itself is just shocking, really.
It's difficult for me to put it into words just how massive this is. The magnitude of this issue is immense. And I always sort of liken it to, it's almost as though there's some invisible gas out there and people are falling to the floor and we're just stepping over them and pretending not to notice. Because, and again, I know people are saying this now at the moment more and more, thank goodness, but I'm going to say it again. It is the biggest killer of under 35s in the UK. Not COVID, not cancer, not road accidents, not drugs, suicide. So my question now is, where's the conversation? Where's the political debate? Where are the talks in the classroom? Where's the public discourse about this? It's just
where's the uproar? Where's the real movement? Because, I mean, you say it's the biggest killer of under 35s. The highest suicide rate in the UK is men aged 45 to 50.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
They're not under 35. That's the generation that were taught you can't talk about your emotions. You weren't told how to. And if you did, it was a sign of weakness. And especially for men in kind of the society that we've grown up in, generalised as the kind of breadwinner, feeding the family sort of stuff. They had to stay strong in that. They had to stay strong. That's not obviously the case at all. And it's so important that we do talk about our emotions, our thoughts, what we're going through, what is stressful, what is really taking a toll on our mind. Everyone has mental health. Everyone has it. Not everyone has mental illness.
No.
That's not at all what I'm saying. But mental health can be good and bad. This is a conversation that I had recently, is that someone was interchangeably using mental health and mental illness in the same sentences. That's not right.
No, the whole language around it. And I'm just going to pick you up on one point there. You said, men have got to be strong. Well, I think vulnerability is strength. I know exactly what you're saying, because that's the way that it was regarded.
Yeah, that's the societal pressure.
Exactly. But vulnerability is strength, and you look at somebody like let's say, for example, the world heavyweight boxing champion Tyson Fury, proven himself to be one of the fittest guys physically on the planet, but not afraid to talk about his the vulnerability in terms of his mental well-being, and to me that is strength. And I think, one of the things that I'm hoping to do my little bit towards is just turning that prism a little bit. So we see things in a slightly different way, or even sometimes a radically different way.
Yeah.
But let me, for example, if someone is self-harming, let's just stop saying that they are attention seeking.
That is totally out of the question.
It's attention needing, and if you have so much pain that you are prepared to do something like that, then, you need attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're not seeking
You're
attention.
Not seeking it,
you need attention. And there are lots
really
of things like that, and especially around men. You mentioned this sort of whole thing around men. Lots of language that, used to describe the model of masculinity in the 21st century. I always think strong, silent type. Who decided to put those two words together, strong and silent, so that silence is a strength? It's absolutely not, and so, yeah, I talk about this sort of quite a lot because one of the things that I wanted to do, apart from talking all the time,
that we very much enjoy. You've got a very good
no, thank you. It's sort of, I was paid to talk as a journalist in broadcast news, so it's old habits die hard and all that. But no, I wanted to do something practical as well, so we set up these 2 talking groups in Sheffield where I live. Yeah, and that is for men. 3/4 of the people who take their lives are men. And it's great to see that working. It's great to see that, what I'm saying actually does work. I see the results of it.
So it's especially the talking clubs. I love this because it's creating and enabling an environment that is safe and supportive for men to talk about it. Because if it is in a general setting, sometimes out of coffee or something, it might be too social. But if you're going there to specifically talk about that one thing, people just let themselves open up, don't they?
And it's amazing because you hear so often, mental health, it's so complex. The reasons for suicide are so complex, and they are and can be. Mm-hmm. But actually, there's one thing that I slightly disagree with that. I think there is a thread that connects all suicides, and that is loss of hope. And hopefully you might give me opportunity to talk about that later on. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the talk clubs, again, it is as simple as it sounds. People often say, how do you measure, mental well-being? We can't do it. It's impossible. It's not impossible. Just that this. We always start with the question, and we go around the group, and the first question is, how are you out of 10 and why? Mm-hmm. Simple as that. And the amount of healing that comes as a result of people being able to answer that question honestly in a safe, non-judgmental, confidential environment is incredible.
It's interesting, that approach as well. I can't remember what study I found it was, but when talking about compassionate subjects, men respond better to statistics and numbers, and the females will respond to the emotive, compassionate side to it.
Yeah.
So the out of 10 allows them to kind of rate themselves, but then the why really then does dig deeper, and gets to the issues that be.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, I was talking to a group of business leaders the other day, and again they were saying, well, this is all very well, but how do we in the workplace measure well-being? It's such a complicated area. And no, try that for a start. Let's start with that. How are you out of 10 and why? That's a pretty good indication. That will give you a fairly clear indication of exactly what's going on in somebody's heart and soul, So we could say, and the other thing that we call it talk club, but it's basically listening club as well.
Yes, that's important. Making sure that those that are talking at the time, you're being listened to so many, and getting that out there, getting those thoughts and feelings out there allows you to understand it. I've said all the time, and that's why therapy is so effective. It's because if those thoughts are up there and locked in your mind, there's no one to challenge them. You're not properly understanding them because you're just bombarded by those thoughts and those thoughts only. When you begin to talk about them, you're then able to understand maybe why you're thinking that way, or it's a bit stupid that I'm thinking that way. Actually, I don't feel like that. That's just my mind telling me that I am. And that's what's so important, is definitely things with anxiety, it's the kind of, I like to call it the what if dilemma. It's always in your mind, what if this happens, or what if this, and if it's only locked up there, you're only surrounded by that. If you start to then talk about it, people can either offer you advice, and at least they then know what you're worrying about, or just speaking about it, you don't need anyone to tell you the advice. No. You've then began to understand it yourself, and you got there yourself. You might be able to talk it out. Someone hasn't said anything. You're like, thanks.
And the other thing is that, you recognise when you do start to talk about it, that Jack feels the same way. John feels the same way. Simon feels the same way. That there may be different problems that they're facing, and they're the difficulties that they're going through can be many and varied, but sometimes there's a lot of common ground when we start to talk about these things. So it's listening is validating somebody, and we all want to be validated, don't we?
So obviously you mentioned hope, so we'll get on to the Baton of Hope if you want to. I'll let you go away with that one.
We talked before, didn't we? Saying, if I need to plug Baton of Hope. Baton of Hope is a charity, a charitable initiative that we've started, and it came about when I met a great man called Steve Phillip, who you've spoken to. Steve, like me, lost his son Jordan to suicide, and we met up here in Sheffield actually. Last year, and we had a lot in common, and Steve was kind of further down the road than I was, and he gave me a lot of sort of just really friendly advice, and just listened and reassured me. And there's this thing, that when something like that happens in your life, it changes the whole course of your life. And virtually everything I do now, all my life experiences, one way or another, connected to the loss of Ross. And, we have this sort of saying in the community, in the club that we're part of, the club that nobody wants to be a member of. I wish I'd never met you, but I'm glad that I did. And,
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And I've met so many.
It's got that sweet, sour taste to it, really, doesn't it?
Exactly. And both Steve and I know what that means. And so, anyway, Baton of Hope. So we decided, going back to the thing that there is this common thread, the loss of hope, and we were talking about what could we do, to restore hope, and I wanted to march on Parliament, that minute. And,
don't we all?
Steve had a far more intelligent approach. And anyway, fast forward, we decided that hope, if we could give somebody like Ross or Jordan or all the hundreds of thousands out there who have found themselves in the same dark place, some kind of just a glimmer of hope, then that would be a great thing. So we've actually got physically, or we will get in the new year, a beautiful baton that's been designed by
fabulous.
It's been designed by Thomas Light, who they've got a royal warranty. They're goldsmiths and silversmiths to the Queen. They still say it's to the Queen. And they've designed this beautiful thing that is heavy with symbolism. And we're just hoping it'll be a kind of, a lightning conductor, a kind of touchstone in a way to symbolise that, in life.
Light in the darkness, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
that Baton of Hope. It is that small shimmer of light that a lot of people, and certainly myself, have been through, and you really don't think there's a way out. But once you do manage to find a way of getting that help, there is that shimmer of light. And then once you can see that, it's very much gradually going towards it, and it's providing that outlet. Really, it's giving that hope.
It is. And I spoke to somebody once who she'd come to the point where she decided that she was going to take her own life. And she woke up and, sleep hadn't changed anything. She was still determined that this was going to be the day. And then a postcard dropped through the letterbox. And it was just that postcard that saved her, because it was just that little bit of contact from her parents. Just that little bit of contact. And in a way, I'm kind of hoping that the Baton of Hope will be that postcard that, it will do
the
something.
Encouragement, the symbol, certainly for me, definitely when you are in that place and when I was planning my suicide, I thought there was no help, nobody wanted to help, nobody could help, but it's just being shown an urge because that, again, is just consumed my entire mind. And there was nothing else that could tell me any different. It was only until it started to really negatively affect other people. And then that was when I was lucky enough to get the help that I needed. And then, of course, that's when you need that time. It doesn't just happen.
No. And I think, this is part of the problem, isn't it? If you are severely depressed, your mind is telling you things that are unreal.
It's against you.
Yeah.
You're actually having to mentally battle your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Which can be, and that's why so many people who are depressed are tired, because that bombardment, it's so difficult to continuously fight and continuously do it. So
wearing, isn't it? And tiring.
Yeah. It does wear you down.
And I think, it's two people fighting each other, but those two people are actually the same person. And, sometimes one side gets the upper hand and it can go on for a long time, as you know. So, yeah, it's just sort of creating a little bit of hope. We're going to tour around the UK. We're going to all the capitals, Belfast, Cardiff, Edinburgh, London, plus loads of other cities as well. And we're going to, basically it's about encouraging an open conversation, normalising conversation around the area of suicide and suicide prevention, which is the key thing. Trying to give people a little bit of hope, shining a light on best practice out there, because,
that's essential. That's essential. I think it was either Steve or Debbie that was saying that actually a lot of NHS staff aren't trained in suicide prevention.
No.
They aren't trained in it, and that's one way to start, really. But it's the awareness as well. If you haven't been through the system, or if you haven't experienced the system for yourself, you're naive to it.
Yeah.
There's no light shining on it. There's nothing to say what's good and bad about it. It's only those that have been through it, and a lot of the time when you've been through it yourself, you feel quite vulnerable and exposed. And I was certainly in a place a year ago where there was no way that I thought I'd be sat doing these kind of shows and meeting people like yourself. If someone told me that a year ago, I'd have been like, yeah.
And how great, to see you here now, looking how you look and sounding how you sound and being how you are, and knowing the battles that you've been through, the difficult times that you've been through. And that's testament to you, but it's also very important that people should see people like you more often and recognise you are the embodiment of hope. It's people like you who, when people get to see this, they will realise that there is a way out, that, there's a reason to stay. There is a reason to hope. So shining a light on best practice is extremely important, because there is some very good practice out there.
Yes, yeah.
However, I think we have to confront and we have to challenge the reality that the mental health provision in this country, by and large, is woeful.
Yeah.
Particularly, at state level, it is woeful. And I haven't met many people at all, in the health service, outside the health service, who wouldn't agree with that. The amount of clinicians that I've spoken to, nurses, doctors, psychiatrists, who all accept that is the case. There are some fantastic, hard-working, underpaid people working in the mental health services. But the system is glacial, and it's not just the health service. It goes through a lot of the sort of key agencies and authorities, like the police, for example, taking away our Ross's farewell letter. That police officer didn't wake up that morning and think, I'm going to make the life of a bereaved family even harder. Not at all. He was sympathetic. He was compassionate. But when it came to trying to get that letter, the system did not
follow in process. That's how it was designed.
Yeah,
that's literally how it's designed.
Yeah, and we have to look at these things. We are a compassionate nation in very many ways. And the health service is fantastic, but if ever I needed help in my life, nothing that's ever hurt me in my life came close to that moment, that day. Nothing. And then to know that there was some kind of explanation, some kind of, I don't know, we were having circular conversations just going through our minds about all the usual stuff,
So you hadn't seen the letter, had you?
No, we knew that
So
it was.
You knew that the letter
We knew it had been
existed.
taken away. It was 12 pages long. And he wrote to each one of us in turn, including his little son, Charlie, asking him to be brave and to be anything that he wanted to be. And we had to plead to get the letter. And again, there was no anger, and there still isn't. We're too full of love for us to be angry.
But you shouldn't have been put in that situation.
No,
just shouldn't.
No, the police computer system wasn't speaking to the coroner's office computer system, and we've got to get this right.
Yeah.
People shouldn't have to go through these things, and I really understand the challenges that the police face. And let's not forget that police officers regularly have to go into a situation to deal with these things, and that's not easy either. And I completely appreciate that.
Yeah. The passion and motivation to get us to a place that it's not. I can't say satisfied because I wish it wasn't a thing, but to be able to support people like yourselves going through that sort of thing and not having it there. We're in 2022. We're not living in the 1950s anymore. We're in a very modern environment. The technology is there. Where do you think it starts? Is it government policy? Is it?
Well, in a way, we've all got responsibility. Whether you're at the highest level of government formulating suicide prevention strategy, or if it's just me and you sending a text to our mates saying, "How are you really?" How are you out of 10, maybe. We've all got responsibility. But I have to say, and this saddens me, that we're fighting. We've got a group of people now around Baton of Hope, and we're fighting a vigorous campaign, and we're struggling to attract political interest.
Yeah.
And I want to understand why that is. The cynic in me might say that there's not many votes in it. They might think, I don't know. But for some reason, we just don't seem to have got to grips with the importance of mental health. You break your finger, you can go to the A&E department here in the city and get it seen to. You might have to wait a few hours, but you'll get it seen to today. You go there with a broken mind, what I call cancer of the mind, which can often be terminal, then you're turned away and put on a 6-month waiting list. Where's the sense in that? Yeah. There is no health without mental health. Back to Tyson Fury.
So true. It's so true.
Yeah.
There is no mental. Yeah. And mental health is as important as physical health.
Of course.
If you don't have your mental health, you can't look after your physical health, and very often your physical health deteriorates a lot. That's why you eat too much or too little. You don't really exercise. You are very tired. That's tied in because your mind isn't operating right.
No.
It's not okay.
No. And some people think that we're fairly advanced. Well, let me just ask people watching this or listening to it a question. If you were suffering with depression, would you tell your line manager, I need to take time off because I've got depression? And to be honest, I have difficulty answering that question, even from my perspective. And I think until such times that we can pick up the phone to our line manager and say, I'm depressed, I need to sort of take time off, then, there's a lot to do. A newspaper headline the other day, a Conservative MP, William Ragg, said that he was...
Admitted.
Yeah.
He said admitted.
The headline,
need to admit that.
Why? I wouldn't admit to having a chest infection.
Yeah.
I wouldn't admit to having a sore throat. Why should I admit to having had depression? I have had depression. Well, it's the common cold of mental illness. Hey guys, there's a lot of it out there. Let's start talking about it properly.
And that will then, when we talk about it, and this is what I say about normalising the conversation, it may not be beneficial to someone who isn't mentally healthy, but it initiates and facilitates for someone that may not be in that position and allows them to feel as though it's okay and they can talk about it.
Yeah, and nobody's immune.
No.
You know, we're all susceptible to one degree or another, and you may have lived a long life and never suffered from depression, but that doesn't mean to say that you never will. You know, it can affect any one of us.
At any point in our lives as well.
Absolutely. So it's just, you know, when I talk about turning the prism, I think that's one area where the prism really needs to be turned around. 360 degrees and, you know, have a totally different outlook.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's such riveting conversation. It's something that I just love so much. I think for the benefit of those that have been in your position and are in your position, what advice would you give to those that have been bereaved by suicide that, of course, unfortunately, you've had to experience? Is there specific things that have helped?
One thing that's certainly helped me, and I can only really speak for myself, and it's a difficult question because in some ways, you know, people ask me, you know, what to look out for with their own children, and there's some experience that I can pass on, but I always say, I didn't save my son, you know, I couldn't save my son, so why are you asking me? But in terms of other bereaved parents, one thing that's really helped me is to try to help other people. And I would recommend it for anybody who, you know, is going through difficult circumstances. It doesn't have to be people who are going through your circumstances necessarily, but if you can sort of reach out a hand, I'm going to start bursting into song in a minute, but if you can reach out a hand to somebody else, you know, it's
contagious as well, isn't it? That help.
It is.
I can't speak for everyone, but I personally believe that helping other people rarely ever makes you feel worse.
Yeah, no.
If not never.
Yeah.
It actually, it's just invigorating. It gives you a sense of purpose, really, doesn't it?
It does, you know, and, you know, like Talk Club, for example, and some of the people I've got to know through Baton of Hope are developing a real interest in their lives, and it's sort of, you know, their narrative, you know, occupies my mind quite a lot, and that's a good thing because otherwise, you know, I find it very difficult to sort of take myself away from the grief sometimes. And one of the side effects for me, anyway, is a kind of brain fog, and you know, keep getting. But even in conversation, you've done very well to keep
you engaged.
Well, not that. No, but keep me on track.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
not engaged. Sorry. You're off with the fairies.
Exactly. But you see, I've gone now. Yeah, it's just sort of there's something else out there that takes you out of yourself, and the other thing is it is this sort of, you know, recognition that there is so much sort of out there in the world that affects people very badly, you know, whether it's mental health or in general, or bereavement, or, you know, whatever it is. There are so many people out there, addictions, and I've got to know some fantastic people who, had I not had the opportunity to speak to them, I probably would have been, well, not probably, I would have been far more judgmental of them than I am now. And hearing their stories, all that judgmentalism, if that's a word, has drifted away.
Yeah.
You know, it's gone. And I sometimes say to Ross in my conversations, you know, suicide is never the right thing. It's never, ever the right thing. But I kind of, in a way, give thanks to Ross for opening my eyes to this less judgmental, hopefully more compassionate world that I'm in now. I get compassion. I understand what it means at the core. It doesn't always make me the most compassionate person, probably, but I do understand it.
Yeah.
You know.
It's been an absolutely fabulous conversation, Mike, and I can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
And it's so almost time to finish.
Yeah.
So the last thing we finish on is if you have one mindful technique that you employ that you think others could try, what would that be?
This probably isn't the kind of answer that people expect, I don't know, but I think it's listening. You know, as I've said earlier, I talk a lot, you know, too much, and I know that. But sometimes when you listen, that's good. It's a really sort of, again, it goes back to the point that I just sort of made earlier. It is in itself a kind of mindfulness because, you know,
it's learning as well, though. It's listening is learning, and it's hearing and it's understanding.
Yeah, and it releases you. You know, it kind of releases you because you find yourself. And this is one of the great things about, excuse me, about journalism. So many, you know, I've met so many inspiring people along the way. Great people who, against all of the odds, have been fighting for something that they believe in. And I've always kind of been drawn to people like that, you know, who, in some cases, have spent their lives fighting for a cause, you know, realizing that there's a cause to be championed out there in the world. So listening to people, I would say. I know, you know, that maybe that's in some ways the opposite of mindfulness, but it works for me. So.
That's absolutely fabulous. And again, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much. It's been really, really, really brilliant.
Yeah.
Everyone look out for the Baton of Hope, of course, which is coming next year, is that right?
Yeah, www.batonofhopeuk.org.
Lovely, fantastic. Thank you all again for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time on Sully's Open Conversation. Bye.
All right.